Hi everybody, I'm Wessel and this is my guide to building an ultimate stereo system, episode 7, building the speaker enclosures. So the easiest way to get the wood cut for your speaker enclosures is just to go to your local hardware shop and they will actually cut it for you according to your specified dimensions. However, I've got some wood left over from a previous project and I'm going to show you how to cut the wood as well. Okay, so I'm outside because I'm going to start cutting the wood for the speaker enclosures. I'm going to use a circular saw to cut wood. Unfortunately I don't have a table saw, which would actually be ideal. So when using a circular saw you want to measure the distance from the furthest edge of the base of the saw to the sawed blade. And that's a value that you're going to use all the time while you're doing your calculations for your wood. In this particular case it's about 94 millimeters. So make a note of that on your own saw. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut around 50 millimeters off the bottom of the wood just to make sure I've got a nice clean edge. So I'm going to set my combination angle to 144 millimeters. So that's 50 millimeters plus the 94 millimeters from the saw. I'm going to mark both sides. So to make sure I cut the wood straight, I'm going to use a piece of wood that I know is straight. And I'm going to clamp it onto this piece of wood and then use it as a guide for the base of the saw. So if I've got a straight piece of wood and I'm clamping it onto my new piece of wood and I guide the blade on this piece of wood, I know it will be straight. So I'm going to clamp it on to the point I've marked over there. Line it up properly. And then line it up properly on the other side as well. Alright, so the straight edge is clamped onto the wood. Time to put the goggles on. And now you can just saw onto this piece of wood. And that will keep your cut nice and straight. Right, and you can see that's a very nice and straight cut. So now I want to cut the length of the wood to 1714 millimeters. Now I've got to measure 1714 minus the 94 from the blade. So that gives me 1620. So I'm going to measure from the edge of the wood 1620 millimeters. Measure it on this side, measure it on the other side as well. 1620. Those should be the marks where my straight edge needs to be clamped. Okay, so for the first cut, I'm just going to measure the 1714 as well, just to make sure that when I start cutting, my blade actually cuts up to that mark. Then I know my compensation spacing for the saw is correct. So I'm just going to measure the 1714 on the one side as well. Okay, so just as the first time, I'm just going to use a G-clamp to bolt or to clamp the straight edge onto the wood. So line it up with the marks that I've made and tighten it. Okay, so just the first time, goggles on, push the saw up to the straight edge, and I'm just going to cut a couple of millimeters just to make sure my spacing is correct. Okay, my spacing here is perfect, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the entire block. Okay, so that's going to be the final height of the speaker, so they're quite tall, and I think at this point the size of this project is becoming clear. So using the same method I'll show now, I'm going to cut 15 millimeters off this edge, and then I'm going to measure all the boards and cut all the boards that I require. So now all the pieces of wood have been cut, and they are as follows. 8 pieces are 436 by 1714, and these are the sides of the speaker enclosures. 4 pieces are 320 by 1714, and they are the inside fronts of the speaker enclosures. These are the 392 by 1714. They will be the front and the back of the speaker enclosures on the outside, and then of course 16 times 320 by 400, and these will be the tops bottoms and dividers of the speaker enclosures. So the first bit of assembly I'm going to do is to glue the two pieces of the top, bottom and dividers together. So I've got a thick piece of wood to screw my sides and fronts to. So the type of glue that I'm using is actually expanding polyurethane glue, and what that means is it actually uses water and to harden, and it will expand when it hardens. So it's the same stuff as what you use to fill cracks in your walls with when you're repainting your house. So the first step is just to spray some water on it. And this will ensure that the glue expands properly when it hardens. And that's very important because we want to make sure that the speakers doesn't rattle once assembled. So this will make sure that there's a proper glued surface between them. Now I'm just going to pour some glue on here. Make sure I spread it evenly around the wood. And it's not necessary to actually spread it with a scraper, because the glue is expanding. It will find its own path into all the nooks and crannies and ensure a proper bond between the two. Like that. Remember to seal this properly, because this will harden overnight if you don't seal it properly. And then glue the two pieces together. Now, to ensure there's a proper bond, I'm also going to clamp them together. So when clamping, make sure that you've got two corners on this side aligned, two corners on this side aligned, and then put another clamp in. Don't tighten it all the way, just make sure this side is aligned as well. Aligned, that looks good, and once you're sure everything is straight and level, you can tighten them up. And this is just to ensure that the two pieces of wood are going to bond properly. One thing you don't want to do is go through all this trouble of building a system like this and then find out you've got pieces of wood rattling when the speakers are going. Once you've got the two pieces of wood glued together, you can start preparing the front piece to be screwed and glued onto that piece. So I'm going to mark 18 millimeters on this side, and that will ensure that my screws are in the middle of the two pieces of wood that I've glued together. Just going to mark it a straight line here, and then I'm going to estimate that's more or less halfway. Give a little bit of a gap there, a little bit of a gap there, and that should be okay. So I'm going to put, say, 4 screws in there. So now I'm just going to drill pilot holes into the wood, and that would ensure that my screws are properly spaced and in the middle. So these holes and screws doesn't have to be extremely neat, because at the end of the day you won't be able to see them, because we're going to glue another piece of wood onto this one. So, you know, this is really just structural. It's not something that you're going to see in the end product. With the holes drilled, I can just spray the top of the wood with water, apply some glue, and now I can just screw the two pieces together at a right angle. So again, line them up as good as possible, make sure they're nice and straight, put a screw in, and tighten it. So 4 screws in, and that's the beginning of the speaker enclosure. Now that the bottom piece is on, over here, I'm going to mark where the first divider section must go into. So I know the distance from this piece, or this joint here, to the joint on the divided piece must be 700 millimeters. So I'm going to go and measure 700 millimeters over on this side, 700 millimeters over on this side. So now, when I come and put my first divider section here, I need to make sure that it's in line with this mark and in line with this mark, and then I know it's in the correct position. I've already taken this piece over here and I've sprayed it with water and I've put some glue onto it. So now I can just line it up with the mark that I've made, so that I'm sure this length is 700mm, and screw it all together. So at this point you can see I've got this volume for one subwoofer, this volume here for the mid-range and tweeters, and then this volume over here for the other subwoofer. So now I'm going to go and sand these sections over here, just to make sure I've got a nice flat area for the side to bolt onto. You can also see this expanding glue starting to do its job, and you can see here's a whole section where the glue is actually oozing out as it's expanding. That will ensure that there's no rattles in the box. Now with the side sanded flat, I can start to fix the side panel to this enclosure, and of course it's the same story. Going to spray it with water, apply some glue, and then carefully lift the side panel and place it on top of the rest of the enclosure. Line it up, and then of course screw it down. Before you screw down the fronts of these sections, make sure they're properly aligned, because they're still sort of loose. So make sure it's properly aligned with the marks that you've made, so that you get your 700mm here. And once you're sure of that, you can screw them down. So I'm sure at this point you're starting to sense a pattern. So you just continue to glue and screw until you've got the inside box built. So I've assembled the rest of the inside layer of the box, and before I go any further, I'm just going to take these screws out here. The reason for that is when I eventually cut the holes for the speakers, I don't want to cut into the screws. So it's only the screws where or close to the speakers that I'm going to take out. For the outer layers of the box, I'm not going to screw them on, I'm just going to glue them on. And that's so that you can't see any screws after the box being assembled. To do that, I'm going to spray it with water, put glue on it, put the top or the side sheet on it, and then pack it full of concrete blocks to make sure that it's weighed down properly for the glue to harden. So it's water first, the glue is next, and now I can place the outer plank on top of it. Make sure it's properly aligned, so corner on one side, corner on the other side. I'm going to place these pieces of foam on top of it just to protect it from scratches from the concrete blocks, and then I can pack all the concrete blocks on top of it. So all the bricks are on now, and I'm just making sure of the alignment, making sure it's all straight. Alright, all the bricks are on, and I can leave it overnight and wait for the glue to harden. So at this point I've got the two sides glued onto the box, and now it's time to sand this top part or the front part of the enclosure flat. So I'm just going to get rid of all the glue that's oozed out of the seams, and also, you know, the wood is not perfect, so you have to sand it to make sure you've got a flat surface to glue the front and the back parts to. So that means a lot of dust. So first thing, you have to put your dust mask on, and then sand. Now with the edges sanded flat, I can go ahead and glue the front and back outer layer on as well. Alright, so now I've got all four outer sides of the enclosure glued on, and I've also spent around an hour sanding all the corners square, and I've also filled up all the holes left by the gluing process with wood filler to start preparing my box for varnishing. But before I'm going to varnish, I'm going to cut the holes for the speakers. So I've made sure that this surface that's on top now is the nicest one, and that's going to be the front of the speaker box. So now I'm going to start measuring where the speakers must go. So according to my plan here, the first speaker must be 597mm from the top of the box. So I'm going to measure 597mm here, and I'm also going to measure the 597 from the other side. Now I know the middle speakers are going to go in the middle, and I've got a dimension on here on my drawings, but I'm going to measure it from both sides to make sure they're absolutely spot on in the middle. So that's 857 on this side, 857, but I'm also going to measure it from the other side, 857. That is about a 1 millimeter difference between the two, so the box has been built pretty accurately. In the same way, I'm also going to measure the middle of the box width-wise to make sure I put the subs in the middle of the box. At this point, I'm also going to measure out 45-degree lines from the middle where the subwoofer is going to go, and that's to mark 4 screws, so that one day when I'm finished varnishing the box and I put the subwoofer in, I know exactly where my hole should be to get the speakers straight. To mark the cutouts for the speakers, I've taken an old scrap piece of plank, I've drilled a hole on one side, and then I've also drilled a hole at the radius of the size I require for the tweeter, the radius of the size I require for the mid-range, and the radius of the size I require for the subwoofers. Now I can nail this hole into the point that I've marked where the speaker should go, and then simply put my pen through the holes and draw a circle, and that will be exactly the size of the speaker. I'm putting my piece of wood onto the mark, putting the nail through it, lining it up with the mark that I've made, hammer it lightly, and now I can just draw the radius for the speaker. Now with all the measurements done, I can drill a hole for the jigsaw blade and then cut out the circles with a jigsaw. Just lift it out of the hole. Perfect. Alright, so I've put the speakers in just to make sure they fit, and they fit in properly, and I think that's going to look very, very good once it's done. So a jigsaw is a very useful thing, but one thing it can't do is cut straight down. Okay, so as you go around the corner, you'll see the jigsaw blade will always either go in to the inside of the circle or to the outside of the circle. You can see all these cuts that I've made here is actually not straight, and they're slightly tilted inwards. Now, to give your speaker more breathing space, I'm going to route these out to make sure they're nice and straight. After routing, the holes are actually nice and straight, and that will ensure the speaker's got plenty of space to breathe in. With the router out, I'm also going to route the edges to make sure they're nice and round. So apart from being more aesthetically pleasing, this round edge actually has an acoustic purpose as well. And that's to stop distortion from occurring around the edges because of the sudden pressure drop as you go over the baffle into the open space below the speaker. And now finally, using a 51mm hole saw, I can cut all the holes for the speaker terminals. Alright, so it's been a lot of work, a lot of sanding, a lot of dust, but finally the speakers are complete. And now I can start making it pretty. So I'm going to apply a couple of layers of water-based varnish, and that should make them nice and shiny. Alright, so this is the first coat of varnish, and as you can see, I've chosen a varnish with a natural brown tint, and it really brings out the grain of the wood. And obviously, as I add more and more layers, this will get darker and darker. So while I'm waiting for the varnish to dry, I'm going to cut up some foam to go inside the speakers, and that's to stop any reflection or reflections coming out of the box and interfering with the sound coming out of the speakers. And to cut the foam, I have figured out that the best tool is to use an electric carving knife, and I've already marked out the foam, so it's just a matter of cutting on the lines. Okay, so this is after the second coat of varnish, and it's starting to get a nice deep color. You can still see the grain of the wood, so I'm very happy with that, but I think I'm going to put another coat on it to make it a little bit darker. You can also see I've put the foam inside it, so the entire inside of the enclosures are covered with foam, and that's going to stop all the reflections coming from the inside of the box. So this is 4 coats of varnish and I think this is the shade that I was looking for. And now I can finally go and connect my speakers up. Now, because this is an active crossover system, there's no electronics or electrical components inside the boxes. So it's simply a matter of wiring the plus and minus terminals from the speaker to the plus and minus terminals on the terminals in the back. Alright, so finally the speakers are done, and I think they look absolutely incredible. And now it's just a matter of plugging them in and then setting up the amplifiers. Alright, so this was obviously the last episode of the series, so I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on my next project. Cheers.